Thank you very much. And good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Tomoko Iwasawa, and I'm teaching, as Jordan introduced me right now, I'm teaching at Reitaku University in Chiba, Japan. Have you ever been to Chiba? No, not yet. Oh, you should come. It's a beautiful campus. Reitaku University is a beautiful campus near Minami Kashiwa, taking the Chiyoda subway line. And there I'm teaching comparative religions. But before that, I did my master's and doctoral programs in philosophy of religion at Boston University. And so having come back to Japan about 15 years ago, I have been teaching comparative religions, focusing on what is the Japanese religious consciousness. Today I will talk about what is Japanese kami, which actually cannot be done in an hour. So today I will pursue this question by introducing an aspect of it that is the psychosomatic aspect of Japanese religiosity, of the concept of Japanese kami. And someone just, I heard that what is psychosomatic? Everybody knows? Psycho means mind, and soma means body. So psychosomatic means mind, body. In this case, the interaction between mind and body inescapably. Okay? So, let's see. Today we investigate what is Japanese kami by analyzing its original meanings developed in the ancient texts and rituals. And the word kami has often been translated into God, but different from the monotheistic concept of God, who is the eternal being and extra-cosmic creator. The Japanese kami never stays the same as the transcendent being, but constantly generates itself by dwelling in all beings in this world. Such kami is regarded as a hidden spirit or force without a visible form, without an image as observed in other polytheistic religions either. Western scholars so far have frequently criticized such concept of Japanese kami as being inconsistent, complicated, or ambiguous. This criticism, however, occurs by failing to appreciate the central role of tama in Japanese religious experience. So today I will show that the essence of Japanese religiosity is best understood by way of tama, which does underlie the concept of kami. Tama has various meanings, polysemous meanings, which I will talk to you later. But the Japanese concept of tama is often compared to spirit and soul in Western philosophy and religion, but not exactly the same with these concepts either. Tama develops in ways that do not presuppose dichotomy between the ideational and the sensible. It is inescapably a combination of the material and the spiritual, body and mind. And I will argue that this indissoluble combination of materiality and spirituality is one of the main features of Japanese religiosity and deserves to be studied more in depth beyond modern mind-body dualism. But do you know the word tama? Have you ever heard tama in Japanese? No? Tamago. Tamago, an egg, is tama. A child of tama is tamago. And why do the Japanese call it tamago? It's a circle. It's a round shape. So tama, the ancient Japanese thought, tama is like a round shape. It's complete form. Or other, tama is also, so the Japanese put many the Chinese characters as pronouncing as tama. Spirit, that is a Chinese character spirit, is pronounced tama in Japanese, and soul in the Chinese characters is also pronounced tama in Japanese, And this is Tamago's Tama. And then Tama, jewel, is also pronounced Tama in Japanese. So all these Chinese characters, the Japanese imported from China in the ancient time, but all these, the Japanese just pronounced Tama because the Japanese thought the whole concept of the Tama includes all these concepts. Okay? And today I will discuss this kind of psychosomatic aspect of Japanese religiosity in 2 steps. Okay. First, by providing an etymological analysis of kami, as well as of other concepts related to the Japanese sense of the sacred, we will explore how the ancient Japanese viewed the relationship between the divine, the human, and the world in connection with Tama. Then, we will examine how such concept of Tama is symbolically expressed in the Shinto ritual called Tama Furi, shaking Tama, that reflects the ancient Japanese belief in Tama. Okay? So, but before discussing what is kami, Shinto, which indeed is a controversial term, Shinto. So there is a very long controversy over what is Shinto, but scholars have not yet come to an agreement of how to define this Japanese religious tradition, Shinto. The classical question which was raised by Kuroda Toshio, whether Shinto has existed without interruption throughout Japanese history, or it just emerged as an independent religion only in modern times. The former position is often regarded as a Shinto fundamentalist or an outer conservatism who claims an unchangeable continuity of Japanese tradition since the ancient time, while the latter can be regarded as an extreme modernist who reduces the Shinto tradition nearly to an invention in the Meiji era called state Shinto. I think, however, the truth is in the middle. First, to the Shinto fundamentalist, I should ask, when in the first place was Japan as a country established? According to recent studies, the founding of Japan as a country can be supposed to be in the mid-7th century, when the term Nippon and Tenno Emperor appeared for the first time in the ancient text as the Yamato clan. Yamato regime established its sovereignty over the Japanese archipelago by enforcing the Ritsuryo system. Ritsuryo system means penal codes and administrative law adapted from China. So before mid-7th century, Japan as a country did not exist yet. Even so, the history of people who lived on these Japanese islands can be traced back to the Jomon period, which is the hunting culture of almost 10,000 years ago. At that time, there existed various local clans which had their own unique and rich kami cults, as recent archaeological studies teach us. The people on these islands then experienced the confrontation of hunting and farming cultures, the interaction of their religious traditions, and then their mutual transformation. Throughout this long history of Japanese archipelago, one religious concept has existed in common, that is the concept of kami. So today I'd like to distinguish 2 concepts, kami worship and Shinto. And from this standpoint, I should also say to an extreme modernist that this kami worship has been one of the continuing traditions of Japan since the ancient time, not a modern invention, which is not exactly the same with what was later called Shinto. So today I'd like to distinguish kami worship, which continued since the ancient time, and Shinto, which is still a very controversial term. But Shinto is included broader sense in kami worship from the ancient time. And both categories includes kami, the concept of kami in kama. Okay? Now, let me explain when the term Shinto was born by introducing an interesting study of Mark Taewen, professor at the University of Oslo in Norway. It is well known that the term Shinto, not pronounced Shinto, but this Japanese, the combination of Japanese characters, kami and wei, this combination, was in the Nihon Shoki, and that which was compiled in 720, in the 8th century, in the Ritsuyo period. Then Professor Taewen argues that at the time of this Nihon Shoki in the 8th century, Shinto as a concept did not yet exist. This combination of Japanese characters, kami and wei, was originally introduced to Japan as a Buddhist term with the pronunciation not of Shinto, but of Jindo, which referred to the kami as non-Buddhist local deities, or in other words, the troublesome kami who obstruct Buddhism or otherwise need Buddhist help. So he says that in this period, this combination of kami and wei was still regarded, used as a negative connotation, in a negative connotation. And then Taewen also says, according to, it was 14th century that the character combination of the Japanese kami and wei was first read Shinto, and the sound change of which symbolized that a radically new meaning was given to this term. Based on a minute textual analysis, he concludes that Shinto, by creating its doctrinal or philosophical dimension, begins not in the ancient period, but was established for the first time in the medieval period. But here, let's see. What makes this controversy over what is Shinto more complicated is the concept of Jingi. These are very complicated history of Japanese religion, so you might be ooh, but I will summarize later, so just be patient. What makes this controversy over what is Shinto more complicated is the concept of Jingi. The term Jingi, the two kami and gi, was originally used in the Chinese classics to mean the gods of heaven and earth. And borrowing this as an official term in establishing the Ritsuryo system, Ritsuryo system means the political religious system established by the Yamato clan in the 8th century. The Yamato regime newly created the Jingikan, the Kami Council, and the Jingiryo, the Kami law, in the early 8th century. By thus enforcing the Jingi system on its territory, the Yamato regime claimed that these rights and law officially govern the Japanese political religious system. Some scholars identify the origin of Shinto with this establishment of ancient Jin system in the 8th century. So that another controversy is like, oh, Shinto is from the 8th century or from the 14th century, or no, it's throughout the Japanese history. So this debate is very much complicated. According to Taewen's theory, however, let's see, in the 8th century Japan, the concept of Shinto was not developed yet, and the Japanese native kami cults were despised and downgraded as Jindo, the savage kami cults, in contrast to the newly introduced civilized new kami law called Jingi. So according to Taewen, there was opposition between Jingi, the new kami law and rights established by the Yamato regime, and Jindo, still not Shinto, but Jindo, and the native kami cults worshipped by local clans, which were very much negatively understood by the regime, not by local people. Okay. So to summarize I put my energy to create the history map, but to summarize the complicated explanation of Japanese religious history so far, my discussion of today is based on the understanding that in order to explore the dynamics of Japanese religious traditions, we need to make a clear distinction between kami worship, the Jingi system, and Shinto. And here, kami worship being a Japanese tradition that has existed even before the emergence of Jingi in the 8th century and Shinto in the 14th century, according to Taylor, in the 14th century. In this way, what is now called Shinto has developed through interactions of the native kami worship, Jingi system, and moreover, Buddhism that was introduced to Japan in the mid-6th century. And today's topic is kami worship. Here, I just skip many the details. So if you want to study more detailed history of Shinto, here I will recommend very good 2 books. One is written in Japanese, Shinto to wa nanika? What is Shinto? By Satoshi Ito, published in 2012. And this is the English book, Shinto in History, just published last year by Helen Hardiker. Helen Hardiker is a very famous scholar of Shinto, one of the very famous scholars. Okay, so now, today, let's inquire into the original meaning of kami, the concept of which has existed throughout Japanese history. As in the manner of Heidegger, here I talk in the philosophical term, as in the manner of Heidegger, who maintained that language is the house of being and inquired into the early Greek language to pursue the actual origins of the Western thinking, we will first investigate the etymology of Japanese kami and analyze how the ancient Japanese understood their being in the world. Drink water here. Okay. According to recent Japanese linguistic studies, the most ancient Japanese language, Yamato Kotoba, started with monosyllabic words which included expressions of the primordial experience of the sacred, such as I, Chi, and Hi. So before the Japanese created, for example, the word kami, just they had the word like Hi, Chi, or I. I meant the sacred, or Hi, Chi. I'll explain each of these now, later. These words preceded the emergence of the word kami and are regarded as the primal Japanese concept signifying the divine. And what underlies these archaic words in common is the feeling of awe and reverence in confronting the supernatural power, the power that seems to be very similar, I think, to what Rolf Otto said, Mysterium tremendum et fascinans. Do you know that word? Mystery that is tremendous and yet at the same time fascinating. So it's overwhelming, mysterious power. It's overwhelming, so it's very fearful. But at the same time, it's so fascinating. So we are attracted by it. So that's the most fundamental experience of the sacred. Rolf Otto said that. So this concept of mysterium tremendum et fascinans is both creative and destructive because of its overwhelming power, as I said, but eventually provides beings in the world with vigorous life force. The ancient Japanese thus held an animistic view of life, sensing a hidden spirituality, which they called I, Chi, and Hi, in all things and phenomena. Now let's analyze these concepts respectively. First, I. The word I originally meant I, life, ikiru, iki, breath, and ki, I, or ki, air, and was also used as a prefix to the things and phenomena that are full of life force and therefore awe-inspiring. For example, itsuki, sacred zelkova tree, or izasa. Sasa means bamboo grass. So itsuki or izasa. Later I will show you the pictures of these. And so these are the trees traditionally regarded as sacred in Japan. When this I was used as adjective, it was transformed into iku, and iku tachi or iku yumiya means the sword, which is full of life force, and yumiya, which is full of life force. Okay? And moreover, when it is used as verb, imu, it became imu and iwau, and the two contrasting attitudes of facing the sacred. The former means observing abstinence when confronting a supernatural force, mark it off as simultaneously sacred and forbidden because of its destructive power. That is the attitude of facing a taboo. And the latter means revering an awe-inspiring supernatural force that is now transformed into a life-giving creative force. So these two are pronounced in the same way, but includes the totally different, the opposite meanings. Imu, iwau, coming from I. I'll show you the pictures of zelkova tree, or bamboo grass, sword, and bow and arrow, yumiya. The ancient Japanese the soul found a life force in these, and I thought that you young people liked anime, so I also brought Ikutachi, that picture of it, like the very life force, the sword full of life force. So for these the things and phenomena, the ancient Japanese just put the I for means full of life force. Ik, ikiru, breath, air, and force. Okay, then next word is chi. The word chi was used mainly as a suffix to signify nature deities. For example, ikatsuchi, thunder, kagutsuchi, fire, yamatsuchi, firewood, notsuchi, grass, and orochi means snake. Also, chi by itself makes such nouns as, blood is called chi in Japanese, chi, blood. And chi-chi, if chi-chi, it's breast milk, mother's milk, chi-chi, full of life force, right? And chi, wind, is also pronounced chi. And ground is called chi. Daichi means the very solid ground, daichi. Chi thus signifies a strong power in general and has made the word chikara. See? Chikara in Japanese so means power itself. Okay? And then the next word, he. The word he represented an abstract notion of this mysterious power of life force and was applied to such words as he. This was pronounced tama, but at the same time pronounced as he. So tama means is also he, means spirit or soul. And this is also he, the sun. The sun itself is mysterious life force, the Japanese culture. So how was the word kami originated then? After a long historical debate, recent Japanese etymological studies maintain that the word kami has its origin in the archaic verb kumu, meaning to be hidden. The word kumu was also pronounced kam when combined with other words such as kamnabi, kamsabi, and kamnagara. Kamnabi means the sacred forests and mountains where the divine descends. Kamsabi means the condition in which the divine essence is fulfilled. Kamsabi means the condition, the divine remains in that sacred thick forest. And kamnagara, even for me, for the Japanese, these three are so complicated. Kamsabi, the divine remains in that sacred thick forest. And kamnagara, that is the condition in which the divine essence is fulfilled. The word kamu, noun combined, if it's combined with the noun I, made, kam plus I makes kamui, and then kami. See? And kami is therefore I that is hidden. I, the power, the mysterious power full of life force that cannot be seen or described. That's the original meaning of kami. This concept of I created another important Japanese word relating to kami, that is inochi, life. Here you see I and chi, which we have already learned. No means of, so I or chi. The power of chi is inochi, life in Japanese. See? By combining the concept of I and chi, the ancient Japanese created the word for life, inochi, meaning chi of I, life force. Such archaic notion of I, the polysemous word representing life, breath, and spirit, I think is not foreign to the Western tradition either, as we find its examples in such Greek words as psyche, and meaning breath of life and soul, and pneuma, meaning air, breath, and spirit, and also in Latin, anima, meaning breath, soul, and spirit, and lastly, spiritus, meaning breath and spirit. Here the concepts of life, breath, spirit are inseparably connected to each other. See. Next. So when this notion of kami was developed in Japanese myth in the 8th century, wherein its creative aspect was especially emphasized, it was given the name of musuhi, the first kami that appears at the very beginning of Japanese cosmogony. The Kojiki is the most ancient the writing of Japanese myth, but here the Kojiki introduces musuhi as follows. Let me read the very beginning of the Kojiki. At the time of the beginning of heaven and earth, there came into existence in Takama no Hara a deity named Ame no Minaka Nushi no Kami. Next, Takami Musuhi no Kami. Next, Kami Musuhi no Kami. These three deities all came into existence as single deities, and their forms were not visible. In the Japanese cosmogony, what existed in the beginning was not God, nor even nothingness, but Takama no Hara, the plane of high heaven, which was already there without being created. Upon this plane appeared the triad of Kami. Ame no Minaka Nushi no Kami means the deity who is the Lord of the sacred center of heaven. Takami Musuhi no Kami, high deity of Musuhi, and Kami Musuhi no Kami, divine deity of Musuhi. Interestingly, these deities took no positive action. Unlike the Western god, these Kami created nothing, but concealed themselves after emergence. As its name indicates, the first deity is supposed to be the Lord of and therefore of the entire cosmos that will come into being. But in spite of this seemingly central role, this deity appears only in this opening remark and never mentioned in the rest of the text. But in contrast with the mysterious character of this deity, the following two deities embody Musuhi, the core principle underlying the Japanese concept of kami and of the sacred. So now let's see the meaning of Musuhi. What is Musuhi? The word Musuhi consists of two parts, musu and hi. Musu is a verb that primarily means to come into being, to come into being, give birth, steaming, breathing, and also tie or bear fruit. So musu, the last concept of tie, bearing fruit. This is also called musuhi, or musubu in a verb. Uniting these multiple meanings, the word musu suggests the primordial biological image of dynamic cycle of life. Also, the hi of musuhi, he, here, has plural meanings such as the sun, and more abstractly, awe-inspiring, mysterious divine power, hi or Tama. In sum, we may understand Musuhi as the vital force that brings about the dynamic cycle of life, the ever-proliferating process of being. By introducing these Musuhi deities at the very beginning, in Japanese, the Japanese myth provides a contrasting worldview to the Judeo-Christian one. So the Judeo-Christian cosmogony is, as you know, characterized by the concept of creation, which is based on the duality of the creator and the created, right? By contrast, being indifferent to this kind of duality, the Japanese cosmogony describes the image of an organism's dynamic process of emerging, growing, and proliferating, revealing how the ancient Japanese have understood the fundamental principle of being. The concept of being has never meant for the Japanese to exist absolutely or eternally, as in the case of Judeo-Christian tradition. Rather, the Japanese have understood both the capital being and beings inseparably through such process phenomena as coming into being, becoming, and being matured. Let's see. Coming into being, becoming, being transformed, and being completed or matured. And call this comprehensive process as naru. Naru. It is a verb in the active, not in the passive, like the Judeo-Christian notion of being created by God. And musuhi is the force that brings about this dynamic cycle of life, the ever-proliferating process of being. Now let's examine the beginning of Japanese cosmogony, this time in Japanese. Do you understand Japanese? This is Japanese, the beginning of the Kojiki, but just listen and let's hear how you can hear the sound of naru, naru, naru. Okay? 雨土初めて開けしとき、高間の原になれるなる、なれる神の名は雨のみなか主の神。次に高み結びの神、次に神結びの神。この御柱の神は皆一人神となりましてなる日、身を隠したまいき。They appeared as naru and they hid themselves. It says. Here, Kami's mode of being naru signifies the whole process of generation and regeneration the dynamic cycle of birth, growth, death, and rebirth. And Musuhi symbolizes the divine essence that brings about this dynamism. It is this biocentric notion of Musuhi, noun, and Naru, verb, that the Japanese concept of Kami originated from. Now, in comparison, you know very well. This is Genesis. Let's see the beginning of Genesis. In the beginning, God created heavens and earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. This is your, for many of you, I think this is your tradition. Right? And so how the concept of God is defined in this Judeo-Christian cosmology? I tried to summarize. This is very abrupt, but let's see. First, we can say, here God is the creator, the prime mover, the Almighty. Second, God is transcendent, it's extra-cosmic, not in this world, but beyond this world, it's transcendent. And God creates beings by His words. So God is described as Logos. It's a very rational God. And this rational God separates light from darkness. In other words, God enlightens this world. Enlightenment is a very symbolic word for rationality, right? And lastly, this God He makes moral judgments on the first day. Wow, of good and evil. This does not happen in Japanese myth. So in the Judeo-Christian tradition, God is the moral God. Let's compare this concept of God in Judeo-Christian myth and Kami in Japanese myth. Here, Kami never means that kind of transcendent, extra-cosmic, eternal God Logos, but rather the intra-cosmic divine essence that gives constant dynamism to all beings in this world. Indeed, for the Japanese, the concept of transcendence has never existed, but the divine has always been what is felt, or in other words, what is experienced through one's body. For transcendence is a concept, logical presupposition, and not a bodily experience. The Japanese experiences of Kami of Musuhi and Naru Kami thus reveal how strongly the Japanese religiosity focuses on life and its dynamism. So the Japanese are not good at the abstract thought. For them, the concrete thinking or concrete thought things are the most important. Or they you understand, right? So they are not good at abstract thinking. Okay, so what is Tama and its relationship to Kami and Musuhi? The ancient Japanese believed that we cannot see the force of Kami as Musuhi, but can experience it through our bodies and call the vehicle of this divine force Tama. So Tama is, as it were, an incarnate Musuhi. The ancient Japanese thought that the divine essence can exert itself only by residing in the material, and so Tama is inescapably a combination of the material and the spiritual, the visible and the invisible. Sorry, here I put some Japanese languages, but for the ancient Japanese, the difference between life and death is perceived as a difference in level of Tama force. Tama that provide all beings with life force increase and decrease. The more prolific and active the Tama in the body, the more vigorous the life force. By contrast, death and disease mean that Tama's vigor is waning. The Japanese have regarded this waning condition of Tama as kegare, which corresponds to English concept of defilement. According to a 19th century scholar, Tanikawa Kotosuga, kegare originated from the similarly pronounced kegare, the decline of ki, which means this the decline of ki. Ki is waning, and so the Japanese concept of defilement was defined by the ebb and flow of ki. So ki represents the unfathomable force behind all natural transformation, a life-giving force in nature as well as within humans. So it is the power encompassing both energy and matter. It is, in this sense, the psychosomatic force associated with blood and breath and can thus be translated as vital force. It is a concept that opposes the mechanistic view of the body emphasized by mind-body dualism and instead inquires how we can develop the potencies of the body, producing a new mode of being. Tanikawa further maintained that the virtue for the Japanese has meant to have ikioi. Let's see. That was, excuse me. Ikioi. Here, I'm sorry, I just put it in Japanese, but that decline of life force means ikioi, the waning of ikioi. And again, it is a concept, excuse me. As Maruyama Masao pointed out, this concept, ikioi, corresponds to musuhi, which originated in more primordial notion, ikioi, coming from I. So from these analyses, we can see how strongly the idea of life force, understood as musuhi, tama, and ki, has provided the basis of the ancient Japanese value judgment, the judgment of good and evil. Indeed, let's come back here. There is no equivalent concept at all to good and evil in ancient Japan. This is not because they were lacking in rational thinking, but because they viewed the world in a totally different way from the Judeo-Christian evolutionary model, wherein good, the mind, always tries to annihilate evil, the body. Rather than regarding the world as an opposition of good and evil, mind and body, the ancient Japanese called this contrastive state as nigi mitama and ara mitama. Nigi mitama, ara mitama means an unbalanced wild condition of tama, while nigi mitama means a balanced tranquil condition of tama. Then how did the ancient Japanese deal with this problem of nigi mitama and ara mitama? We can find the realization of this ancient belief of tama in a traditional shamanistic Shinto ritual called tama furi, which literally means shaking tama. Originated in the 5th century by the Mononobe clan, who later hold the commissioner post of the Shinto religion. This ritual, the tama furi, has continued to be one of the essential practices of Shinto to this day. Actually, even now in Imperial House, the emperor, it is said, we don't know, it's a secret, so we cannot know, but the emperor once in a year performs this tama furi on the day of winter solstice. To be precise, before the winter solstice, the day before the winter solstice. Let's see. So this tamafuri is a symbolic reenactment as well as psychosomatic practice of transforming one's defiled condition, that is the condition of kegare, in which one's vital force gets unbalanced, either by waning or running out of control, into a revitalized pure state that might produce health, vigor, and good fortune. What is unique about this Tama-free is that it brings about this vital state not by exterminating the defiled, but by utilizing its power in an opposite manner that leads toward increase of potencies. This transformation is possible because the notion of ki presupposes the ever-circulating system of life in which defilement is an inescapable phase of life cycle. In this thought, defilement, which is regarded as evil in the Judeo-Christian tradition, is no longer a stain or an otherness to be annihilated, but a process necessary for the reinvigoration and reorganization of our being. In Japanese myth, this Tama-free ritual, let's see, this picture. In Japanese myth, this Tama-free ritual is symbolically expressed by the episode of Amaterasu, the sun goddess' concealment in the rock cave. Brother Susanoo's violent, lawless acts dissolved the order of things, one after another, and eventually made Amaterasu so angry that she hid herself in the cave. Without her, the plane of high heaven was completely dark because he is the sun goddess, and all kinds of calamities arose. The 800 myriads of gods assembled to discuss how to lure her out of the cave. Then, the goddess Ame no Uzume began a dance on an upturned tub, partially disrobing herself. And this so delighted the assembled gods that they roared with laughter. Amaterasu became curious how the gods could be so amused while the world was plunged into darkness, and was told that outside the cave there was a deity more glorious than she. She peeped out, saw herself reflected in the mirror, and was thus drawn out from the cave. This is a very famous the climax of the Japanese myth. Now the world was filled with light and brought to life again. Scholars have interpreted this as a mythical expression of Tama-furi combined with sun worship. Here, Amaterasu's concealment in the rock cave symbolizes the sun's death, which might correspond to the winter solstice. Human lives wane unless they are replenished with new life force. Humans and their communities, therefore, must rejuvenate themselves by harnessing the positive power of the divine periodically. The ancient Japanese most vividly experienced this sacred moment at the winter solstice, when the sun experiences its metaphorical death. This idea of death and rebirth constitutes the core aspect of Tama-furi. Later in the Heian period, Tama-furi was formalized as one of the most important rituals of the imperial court, the Chinkonsai, and performed on the day before the winter solstice, and even now. Previous studies describe that when this ritual was held in the imperial court, the emperor first lay on the sacred bedding covered with madoko or fusuma, which is like a robe that seemingly functioned as a magical covering, in which the emperor performed imitative death. After the emperor conceals oneself in the madoko or fusuma, in this robe, the Chinkon ritual brings about the rebirth of the emperor by reinvigorating his or her life force. A court lady in front of the madoko or fusuma stands on an overturned bucket and slides the bucket 10 times with a halberd like Ame no Uzume. This performance, which the Japanese myth describes as Ame no Uzume's dancing in front of the cave, represents the act of Tama-furi, shaking Tama, that is, calling in life force from outside and attaching it to the emperor's body so that it can rejuvenate his or her life again. On another level, see, this materialist concealment in the cave may be interpreted as symbolizing the return to the womb. In Eliades, this is Eliades phraseology. The womb symbolizes the prenatal embryonic state where there is no form, no separation of body and mind. It is the night before creation, as the Bible says. In this womb, we immerse ourselves in the primordial waters to become nothing. Or more properly speaking, it is not nothing but fullness, from which all beings, all forms are born. The womb, which is nothing but fullness. In this transformation, the state of kegare, aramitama, is not regarded as evil to be annihilated, but a necessary process for body-mind to be renewed and reorganized. In other words, the transformation of being is realized not by overcoming the physical and transcending to the metaphysical, here the physical being the source of evil in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but in the case of Japanese myth, by returning to the womb, the original birthplace of our being, where our body and mind, the physical and the metaphysical, are not yet separated. Interestingly, it is often said that Japanese shrines symbolize womb. Did you know that? Shrines symbolize womb. There we go back to the original place of our existence and regenerate ourselves, transforming aramitama, the unbalanced state of our tama, into nigi mitama, the balanced state of tama, in order to be reborn to a new mode of being. That's the function of jinja, the shrine, of Japanese shrines. This is the picture of one shrine, the Kumano Hongu Taisha at Wakayama, Japan. This is very interesting. This is just a forest, but is it not? I am the religious. If I talk about the religion and the ancient religion, it contains many erotic elements. But because that is religion, the ancient religion, is this not very erotic? This is the womb, exactly the womb, and this is the Kumano Hongu Taisha in the ancient time. Now there is the flood by the river in India. That was 200 years ago or something. And now the Kumano Hongu Taisha was moved to a higher place on a hill. So we cannot see this kind of erotic now at the Kumano. But before 200 years ago, or even from the ancient time, the Japanese shrine represented by this Kumano Hongu Taisha, they had this kind of shape. Another point here, so like this, another point to note is that shrines are always located in nature, like thick forests and mountains, so that we experience this transformation with our body and mind, physically and spiritually. So, finally, the theme of the return to the womb thus permeates the philosophy of Japanese kami. Ultimately, the constant rejuvenation and reinvigoration of our being, the principle of tamafuri, tama shaking, becomes the central theme of the Japanese kami, I think. Again, we emphasize that this rejuvenation is accomplished not by negating body and separating it from mind, but by meaningfully resuscitating it so that it can bring dynamism into our psychosomatic existence. But mind and body cannot be separated. Thank you very much.
like to thank you for your attention. I would like to thank the speaker for giving us such an in-depth analysis on the notion of kami and tama. I would like to invite you all for a session of Q&A starting now. So if you have any comments, questions, inquiries, feel free to speak out. Who's ready?
Oh, sorry, I forgot this.
Hey, I have a question about the concept of tama.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a lot of times, like in like Western intellectual thought, we have a separation between like the physical and the metaphysical.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff we can measure and the stuff we can rationalize but can't measure. What I took from the lecture was that tamago doesn't have that barrier. Is that it's all part of a confluence together, that the physical and the metaphysical are in constant interaction, and that they didn't intellectually take such a hard line. Am I correct, or did I kind of misread?
You mean egg?
Tama. Sorry, just tama. I might have said tamago.
Sorry.
Because, sorry, I just
Tama.
been to too many sushi restaurants. But yeah, tama.
Tama.
The concept is that. Did I understand that correctly with the blurring of the lines between the physical and the metaphysical?
The Japanese are not very good at, as I said, are not very good at separating the abstract and the concrete. And whenever we or they think about the divine, just that divine essence should be something in the material. We cannot, the Japanese cannot imagine some divine essence. It might be in the air, because the air is also the substance, right? But not, the Japanese do not imagine the world, the transcendent world. No. The world is this, the biocentric, this world is our world. And we cannot presuppose any other world, any world other than this. It's very what should I say? No abstract notion. Now, it might be an extreme to say that for the Japanese there is no abstract notion, but we have. But can you understand? could you develop that?
Well, I'll try.
Yeah, you try. Please.
I'm not an expert on the topic, but from what I understood, I think Professor Iwasawa is trying to point at this unity rather than duality, right? There's no dichotomy here, and there's no duality in terms of idealist approaches in the West. So it seems to me, if I may follow up with a question, that when it comes to cross-comparing with Western approach, this is rather, even though it's not a materialist approach, but there's no order beyond human beings. There's nothing beyond the universe itself. It's all kind of all-inclusive, and it springs out of necessity rather than some reason or telos, right? Or some kind of goal that is kind of, there is no, even though it seems that there is there like a divine design, or again, we heard how those gods just appeared and then hid themselves, and how this thing actually came into being. So it's kind of like in between the
That's design. But the Japanese also believe in something great, right? But it's not transcendent, because the something great gives us force that enables us to live in this world. And that force is very biological in a sense, never transcendental, because we humans have body, and just by using this body we live. So power coming from, not from the transcendent world, but more biologically from this world. That's it. Why should we think about the world beyond it? We cannot verify that. That's the Japanese approach. When we cannot verify, we cannot presuppose that Well, this is more Indian, but but Tama and Musuhi and Kami is not, as you said, not too much materialistic. It's so the combination of the spiritual and material, but that kind of spirit is still within this world and not the transcendent abstract notion. I should think about more better way of the explanation.
Kind of a middle way between those two concepts of idealist and materialist. It has elements of both, but it's neither. But more leans towards kind of an all-inclusive concept of nature itself, being divine, and which there are some examples in philosophy, but yes, it's nothing like the Shinto religion and tradition. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome. So please raise your hand, and we'll bring the mic to you. Please stand up. Just
Hello, my name is Shams. I understood that there's a concept of God and Kami and Tama and Shinto, but I was wondering, is there also like a concept of angel within the field? Because in some religion there's a concept of angels, like also heaven and hell. But what about Kami or this field of Japanese concept of God?
I think the angel, the existence of angel presupposes the classification of gods or the divine being, right? But in Japan, we have myriads of gods, so many gods, and there is no classification within them. So angel might be the messenger between the heaven and the earth. So we don't have that kind of classification, just all the equal. We have good gods or evil gods, but every god has their own competence or their own the position in this world, not negated.
Thank you.
So the concept of angel itself is very foreign to the Japanese tradition, I think.
very appealing.
Very appealing.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about ghosts in the traditional beliefs of Japanese people. What is the relation between the people who are living and the people who died? Is it related in some way to Kami or the other concepts that you raised? Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. And the world of the dead is not separate from the world of the living. That's the Japanese way of thinking. And the dead always see the living from, for example, from the mountain. So the dead spirit goes to the mountain and make some community. And they sometimes come back to comfort us. For example, we have Obon. Obon is a week in summertime, right? And during that time, the dead comes back to the countryside from the mountain. And so the people just try to make them happy and to live as if the dead are living again. So just a week during that week, the people who live stays with the dead, and then again the dead goes back to the mountain. So this kind of no separation between the dead and the living, those who live, have been very strong in the Japanese tradition. But now the young people, or including myself, this generation, are getting more less and less appreciating this kind of the tradition.
Okay, what I think is really interesting is the concept of Tama and concept of Ki, because we are used to the word like Genki or like Yoki, and how that actually works with the concept of Kekare, and also the Japanese notion of Aramitama and Nikimitama. It's like balance or imbalance. So in the Japanese notion, the concept of good and bad is just imbalance of, so it's just imbalance of ki, which means there is no actual supreme good or supreme bad. Is that correct?
Right. Let's see. Is there a blackboard here? No. Whiteboard? No. I wanted to write a circle here, but the key can be explained as a circle, and then here's how can I explain? But so there is a key decreases and then increases, and here's like a circle, and then if you it's a circle of our body and also mind. And when our ki is full of life force, we have, let's see, this here, we have keys here. But then if ki wanes, the energy, the body energy, it wanes, and then we go down to this circle, to the bottom. But here, so we need to replenish, rejuvenate ourselves, or the body to become full of ki again. So this is a circle. And this circle is this circle symbolizes the seasonal change of a year, or just once the cycle of ki of our body energy, or as you said, yoki. When we are sick, this is a cycle of the genki, the healthy state, and yoki is the bad state, the yoki. So that every state of body and mind can be explained by the web and flow of ki, the high, the full condition, and the minor. So this is a cycle. So it's a circle. The philosophy of ki.
Other questions, comments?
So I'm interested in the notion of the soul, and especially the notion of death. And so for one of the Tama, is soul, and as you said, like there's no distinct difference in the world of dead and living, and so does that mean the soul will live, the soul will not destroyed and then keep living after death? And is there equivalent idea of reincarnation in the idea of ancient Japanese?
Reincarnation, yes and no. Reincarnation is more like the Indian thought in their philosophy, and the Japanese too. Some Japanese have that kind of the belief of reincarnation, but in that case, I think that when we think about the reincarnation of soul, for me, it's more like having shape. The soul has some stable condition. But in the Japanese case, in the case of Japanese, the Tama or the soul, or the Musuhi is more, I said it's a combination of material and the spiritual, but it's more, reincarnation presupposes the same thing comes again, but the Tama or Musuhi does not presuppose that kind of same character. Different. So it's more, not abstract, I should not use this word, but more what should I say? More ambiguous, more spiritual, more not material. So it's materialistic. No, it's material, but not too material. So it's in between the spiritual and the material. I'm sorry, it's a Tama. It's so, that what I can say is that
is there so after death, the identity of the soul, is it different, or is it does it change throughout the process of death? And
I think can be both, but that concept of identity is very foreign to the Japanese tradition, I think.
so
The
there's
soul's identity, no.
no idea
It's
of
more broad. It doesn't have any individual's character when it's dead. It becomes more broader something, more broader Tama, and it doesn't. It no longer has the individual character in it. So Tama, each Tama becomes the broader Tama, and then as the Yanagita-kun said, in the 30 years later, the Tama becomes the ancient, the ancestors' Tama in general. So it doesn't have any individual, each power of Tama no longer.
Questions? Is it pertain
Please.
on her question is pertain to the word tamachi. That's
Tama?
tamachi. That's
Tamashi?
Yeah, tamachi. That's like so, because that was translated as soul, but
Yeah.
the concept was different, right?
Tamashi is the same with Tama. So what I said now is also the corresponds to Tamashi. So Tamashi does not have any individual character when it's dead, and it becomes more broader concept of and ancestors Tama, and then protects. I should not say the Japanese only, but the people in the world.
If I may just ask here, what's the relationship with the Hindu concepts of Brahman and Atman? Because it does seem like the Atman is the individual, the soul of the individual, which wants to live on. But actually, after that, it seems like it goes back to the cosmic soul. Or, in a sense, does this have any form of similarity within the Shinto perspective? Or
Yeah, I think in a sense it is similar, very similar. Yeah. So I feel the more familiarity to the Indian thought. But at the same time, I think the Indian thought is more logical and more stronger. It has a stronger concept of identity as Atman, which is weaker in the case of Japanese. It's very sensitive, sensitive the experience. But I think the Indians, the Hindu, had a stronger notion of the individual than the Japanese notion of watashi.
yes?
But I'd like to ask the Hindu students if there are some.
So I have a question about the tamafuri.
A tamafuri, yes.
Yeah, because you said that the emperor performs it annually, right?
It's a secret, but some scholars just peeped in and said so.
Because I was wondering, like has this been a tradition since Emperor Tenmu?
Tenno?
Or since
Tenmu.
Since Tenmu.
Tenmu.
Because he was the first emperor, right?
Yes, not the first, but the beginning of the Ritsuryo system.
Yeah, because
The temple.
you know, you said that the Tamafuri was performed at the winter solstice to like replenish
Right.
the people's Tama, right? So the emperor does it to replenish his own Tama, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is in order for him to like live longer.
Not him himself.
Because I
but
thought
yeah.
Tama was like, if you're full of Tama, that represents life.
Mhm.
And once Tama is waning, that means it's like illness or you're closer to
Right.
death, right?
Right. Mhm.
So like the reason I was wondering if it was connected since the 7th century was because during that time, emperors, like, they went through a lot of emperors, right? So
Mhm.
like, they were even like forced to abdicate or were like killed. But now, like, the emperor abdicating is such a foreign concept. That's why I was wondering, like, why would they perform this ritual like every year if the emperor was just going to be replaced soon anyways?
When the emperor dies, and when they needed to be to become the next emperor comes, there is the special ritual called Great Tamafuri, Daijosai, in that year. So it's not only for that one emperor, but so every year this Tamafuri symbolizes as you said, the empowerment of emperors, the life force, which symbolizes because the emperor is the political, religious, the leader in the ancient Japan. The increase of his life force symbolizes the enforcement and the empowerment of country itself, Japan as a country itself. And then when that emperor dies, it happens the great Tamafuri is held to welcome a new emperor. So it's just not only for that emperor, but it just continues every year, and for eternally for that emperor's generations.
We have time for one or two more questions. Thank you.
I'll try one or two. I'm thinking of Izanami.
Izanami?
Yes, Izanami. She died, and she went
yes.
into sort of like a nether world.
That's right.
So kind of like another world,
Mhm.
just like the original Kami, or sort of like in a heaven, kind of like something to some extent metaphysical, maybe, like a heaven. And then there's the creation process, the creation process. But she goes into the nether world, and then there's like a decomposing process, right? Which, as I understand it, this would be, we might not call it evil, but like an impurity of some sort, which I think the Japanese have this idea of like an impurity, like they really love cleanliness, and both clean heart and external cleanliness, which is the main reason why I stay in this country. But this idea of cleanliness, so they do have the idea of like a pollution, maybe not
yes.
called evil, but some notion, maybe some kind of a distinction. But I'm also thinking of like a death. I don't know. Does Izanami, she doesn't come alive again, right? That I know of in the story.
She continues to live in the Netherlands.
Yeah. So there is like an underworld of some sort.
Yes.
Yeah. And one other thing I was going to just mention, just as a comment, I'm thinking, the way you're talking about Tama and maybe the individual Tama somehow is absorbed into the wider Tama concepts. I'm wondering if originally in the biblical tradition, the original ground creature, Adam, is composed of physical dust and the breath of God. And they do go together, but it's still a distinction. And then at death, the breath, you have this individual person with a physical body and the breath of God, and then at death, the body disintegrates and the breath goes back to God. So maybe that's similar
Very similar.
to what you're saying.
Yes, yes. So in Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve, I find many similarities as very fundamental, the truth for humanity.
And you mentioned that for Hinduism, I think, as I understand it, like Atman, in the Upanishads, the Atman is considered the same as Brahman, which would mean like deathless and birthless, which is, like you were saying, is this like pretty deep concept. So these kinds of transformations, I guess, wouldn't occur there. It's kind of like it's there a finality of sorts. And I guess that came to Japan through that same kind of idea through Buddhism.
Right.
Right, thank you very much.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? I guess on that note, we can conclude today's session. Thank you all for coming.